Welcome back. Today's story filled with drama and unexpected turns. Hit like, subscribe, and let's jump in.
Adriana's mother started, and I gave a mental eye roll. I knew what was coming next. Have you made any decisions about your future yet? It was a constant question for my mother. There truly wasn't much to decide. It was either go to the regional technical institution and take as many courses as I could before transferring to the nearest university to complete my degree, or go out and obtain a low-paying job as a high school graduate. There weren't many other alternatives available to me. Oh, and don't forget that I'd need to work at least part-time to pay to attend the regional technical institution. You know, Mom, I've always been captivated by the medical industry. Sure, I want to be a doctor, but there is no way I can attend medical school without incurring a few $100,000 in student debt. I'll most likely attend the regional technical institution to complete my lower-level coursework before transferring to a local university to finish my nursing degree. That way, I may live at home while attending school and save money. But, honey, you are a brilliant student and will graduate in the top 5% of your class. You got 3.96 GPA. Surely, you have received multiple scholarship offers, Mom grumbled. Okay, let's review this again. Yes, I'm the top of my graduating class. Yes, you'd assume that would result in some decent scholarship offers. Normally, this is true. The problem is that I am graduating at the top of my class from one of the lowest performing high schools in the nation. Colleges consider not just your GPA, high school transcript, and other factors from your high school experience, but also the institution itself. According to them, finishing at the top of a failing high school is about equivalent to being a mediocre student at an average high school. All right, fine. I received a few partial scholarship offers from middling institutions, but none that covered what I needed. I would have to make up the difference, which we cannot afford. Sometimes the truth stings. It did on that particular instance. I witnessed my mother's expression as she was faced with the realities. It was not her fault that we were in this situation. We were imprisoned in the lower middle-class purgatory. My father earned just enough to prohibit me from receiving financial assistance for low-income students, but not nearly enough to help me pay for college. In reality, no one in my family was very wealthy. Even my grandma had a quite austere existence. She didn't benefit much from her 3 divorces. I suppose that's what happens when you cheat on your spouse and they take the effort to conceal their assets. What about the additional courses you've already completed at the community college? My mother inquired. Yes, I was already taking a few classes at the community college. I was also performing really well in them. Mom, they don't look very hard at them. Okay, they're college courses, but they're remedial. They essentially see them as an extension of high school courses. The chemistry course I took over the summer was essentially a glorified high school course meant to prepare me for a genuine college chemistry course. Anyway, I was in my last semester of high school, attempting to figure out my future. As I previously said, I had always been attracted by the medical industry. I like watching evening television shows about hospitals and physicians. My dirty little secret was that I also like viewing hot films on the internet. Anyway, given my financial situation, it seemed that my desire of becoming a doctor would not be realized. The best I could do was become a nurse. Sure, nursing was a noble career, and it would remain in the medical realm. There was no shame about it. Still, that wasn't my dream. Such is life, most of us seldom get our goals realized. All we can do is keep plugging along and making the most of our circumstances. Okay, I should probably explain my family's condition. I'm an only kid. My family comprises of me, my mother, father, and grandma. As previously said, my grandma married and divorced 3 times, each time because she cheated on her husband. My parents have been married for all of my life. I'm old enough to see that my parents do not have the same love connection that many of my friends' parents enjoy. They do not sleep in the same room, and I have never heard or seen any evidence that they have ever had intercourse while I have been alive. Actually, I recognized some years ago that my mother was cheating on my father. I never understood why he put up with it. Unfortunately, I lost a lot of respect for him after I discovered what was going on. In his defense, as I subsequently discovered, I never saw him with another lady during that period. As far as I could tell, he had stayed loyal to my mother. So, it gets us pretty much up to date. The day following my chat with my mother, I resolved to get started and enroll in community college for the upcoming semester. I was at the library, using my laptop to fill out paperwork. Suddenly, there was a presence beside me. I glanced up and saw a really lovely lady in her early 40s standing at my table. She was dressed professionally, in a good business suit. Her skirt was cut to the knees and paired with a matching blazer, her silk shirt was blood red, and she was wearing quite modest inch heels. "Are you Adriana Brooks?" she inquired. I received the impression that she already knew the answer to the question, but she was being nice by asking. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" I said. She chuckled, then proceeded, "No, but I am sure that I can assist you." She placed a business card on the table and continued, "Please be at this address tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I already know that you do not have any previous engagements at that time, and it would definitely be in your best interest to be there." She turned on her 4-inch stiletto heels and walked out of the room. I couldn't take my gaze away from the sway in her hips as she sauntered away. Damn, she looked hot. Yes, she was around 20 years older than me, but still. "Okay, you've surely started figuring things out." I've knew I was attracted to ladies for some years. I went through the denial stage. "No, this is wrong. I'm not a lesbian." I began seeing more men in order to show to myself and everyone else that I was heterosexual. Of course, it did not work. There was never the faintest hint of attraction. I ended up doing more hand jobs than I'd like to confess. My one failed effort at a BJ resulted in me vomiting in his crotch. I ultimately quit dating during my senior year. My justification was that I was focused on my education in order to get the highest scholarship offers possible. Meanwhile, late at night, I would be masturbating to mental pictures of Olivia Bennett, the head cheerleader, or Dr. Larson, the tall, beautiful Norwegian bombshell who taught chemistry and physics at the local technical institute. Okay, here are the cliff notes on my life up to this point. While I had fully accepted that I was homosexual, I hadn't told anybody yet. First and foremost, since I hadn't yet had a girlfriend, it was rather moot. Second, I wasn't sure how the news would be accepted. I chose indifference over conflict. I'd simply muddle along until I realized I needed to come out. Anyway, I didn't tell my parents about the lady I met at the library. I honestly had no clue what she wanted, so I wasn't going to inform anybody until I figured out what was going on. I slipped the card inside my handbag and resumed studying. That night, I returned home and carried on as usual. It wasn't difficult since there wasn't anything unusual about the day, except that a lovely lady handed me her card and told me I needed to be at her office the following morning. When I came home, however, I saw something peculiar. "Where's Dad?" I inquired. Apparently, there was an emergency at one of his company's other locations, and he had to leave town on short notice to resolve the issue. "Oh, he doesn't normally go out of town," my mother said. "What office is it, and when will he be back?" "I don't really know. He never mentioned it. He'll probably be back in a day or two." As you may have guessed, my mother was not really interested in what my father was doing. She didn't care as long as he worked and paid the expenses. 10 a.m. I found myself at the door of a legal office on the 5th level of the building. As I entered the office, I approached the receptionist, gave her the card that the lady had given me yesterday, and informed her that I had an appointment. She glanced at the card, grabbed up her phone, pressed a few keys, and said, "Miss Henderson, your 10 is here." A few minutes later, the same lovely lady as yesterday arrived. "Ah, Miss Brooks, I'm so delighted you arrived this morning. I have a hunch you'll remember this day fondly. Please follow me," she replied, shaking my hand before leading me back to a conference room. "Do you want something to drink? Coffee, tea, water, or soda?" she asked. "The water will be fine. I've had enough coffee this morning." She pressed a few keys on the phone and asked Megan, the receptionist, to bring her a cup of coffee and a bottle of water for me. "First things first," she said. "My name's Rachel Monroe. I was your maternal grandfather's attorney. This gathering is to distribute your part of his final will and testament. He left a DVD for you to view, and then I will notify you about your inheritance. There will be various paperwork to sign before you may obtain the trust accounts and other items." "Wait a minute," I protested. "You're talking as if my grandpa is dead. I knew all 3 of my grandmother's ex-husbands, and I know they're still alive. Are you certain that you have the proper individual here?" She offered me a dazzling grin. "Quite positive," she said. "You know your grandmother's last 3 ex-husbands, but you have never met or known her first husband. The video will explain everything." Miss Henderson turned, grabbed up a remote, and began playing a movie on the enormous flat-screen TV on the wall. the television came up and showed an elderly guy who was clearly extremely unwell. A few seconds later, Miss Henderson announced from off-screen that the video was starting. He returned his attention to the television and started to speak. "Hello, Adriana. I understand you don't know me, but I know you very well. I am Philip Carter, your biological grandpa. I know you've been taught differently, but Miss Henderson has evidence that what I'm telling you is true." Miss Henderson passed a hefty folder across the table to me. "2 months before you were born, I discovered that your grandmother was cheating on me. I filed for divorce and left. Your mother was so mad at me that she cut me out of her and, as a result, your life. I was not allowed to see or communicate with you. Your grandmother moved her lover at that time in with her, and you had always been told that he was your biological grandfather. Since I could not have any contact with you, I began watching you from a distance. Once several years had passed and my business grew, I became successful enough to be able to hire private detectives to keep track of you. Also, I have kept in touch with your father. Obviously, this had to be done in secret. Don't think that he is less of a man for staying with your cheating mother. While I personally don't agree with his decision, it was the right decision for him. He stayed because of you. He realized that the only chance that you had to grow into the moral and caring woman that you are is if he remained solidly in your life and could teach you the right values. Had he divorced your mother, your main role models would have been your cheating mother and grandmother. He stayed in order to give you a real role model. Now that you are an adult and about to graduate high school, he has no more reason to stay with your mother. Miss Henderson will explain more later. I regret that I was never able to tell you about me and spend time with you. We did meet a couple of times in passing, but I set those encounters up so I could see you in person and say a few words to each other. Since I divorced your grandmother, I have become extremely successful and wealthy, and I am leaving the majority of my estate to you, with a couple of with that stated, I'd like to turn over the remainder of this meeting to Miss Henderson. Miss Henderson took out a thick file folder from her briefcase and started detailing my unexpected inheritance. After a few more seconds of stillness, the film came to a close. First and foremost, this is a trust that your grandpa established for your education. You may practically attend any university in the nation. It covers all tuition, books, accommodation, food, and transportation, as well as a hefty monthly budget for amusement or other expenses. It will also cover the cost of a master's or doctoral degree if you want to pursue one. Once you've finished your degrees, you'll have access to another trust that will help you get started in your profession without worrying about your finances until you're established. In terms of job opportunities, depending on what you study, you may work for your grandfather's firm and ultimately take over. Obviously, it depends on your professional choice. That would need a degree in business, engineering, or maybe law. That would be totally your decision. If you do not pick one of those options, you will still get the trust assets, which are worth several $100 million. I was very astonished. Here was the answer to my prayers about attending college. More than that, I may pursue my medical degree and become a doctor. Better still, I wouldn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debts to repay after I finished. What happens to the business if I don't go into those fields and take the company over? I was thinking about. Then your father continues to run it until he retires and turns it over to whomever the board of directors names as the next CEO. You, by the way, will still own significant shares and even be on the board of directors. When your father does retire, you will be named chairman of the board. When you retire, your heir will take over. The company will always be controlled by your family until the last heir dies with no heir to take their place. Wait a minute. You said that my father is now running the company. Well, not yet. He will begin once the divorce is final. That way, your mother will not get any alimony. He is currently unemployed, but he resigned from the company he was working for yesterday. He moved into the house that your grandfather left for him. Oh, my mom doesn't know, does she? Miss Henderson checked her watch. She should be finding out in about 2 minutes. What do you mean? I inquired. That's when the process server is supposed to deliver the divorce papers to her. I had barely pulled out my phone when her phone rang. Too late. She's just been served, she said, looking at the message on her phone. Okay, now what about those conditions that he mentioned? Well, the most important is that your mother and grandmother are not to receive a dime or any other benefit from your inheritance. The trust is very specific that only you are to get any benefit from it. The trust for your education is yours regardless, but that can only be used for your education. The second trust can't be used to benefit them, but I don't want them to be homeless or starve. That's already taken care of. As part of the divorce, your mother will receive a small trust fund that will continue to pay the rent and utilities for the mobile home that she and your grandmother live in, as well as a small monthly stipend for food and other necessities. There is one more thing. She went on. A prenuptial agreement is typically required for people with the kind of wealth we're discussing. However, if you cheat on your spouse and get divorced, the entire trust and inheritance will be transferred to your spouse, leaving you with nothing from the estate. She went on to talk about other items that I was going to get, and then there was a pile of papers for me to sign, and then there was only one more document. "So, how did you get here?" she asked. "I took a bus. I do not have a car." "You do now," she told me. She slipped over the final paper, which I looked at in shock. It was the title for a 1973 Charger. "Do you know how to drive a stick shift?" she asked. "Yeah, my father taught me to drive his truck that has a stick shift." "Good. Just sign this, and I will take care of the title transfer. It is sitting in the parking lot. You can drive it home. We can work on title transfers for the remaining automobiles later. Your father is now examining them to confirm their condition for you." "Okay," I said. I started to go, but then paused and returned to my new lawyer. "You know, I believe I should chat to my dad before going back to visit Mom and Grandma." "Where is my dad?" "He's arrived at his new home. By the way, this is the home he will inherit. He will not have ownership of the home until probate is completed. It will probably take around a year. He may live there, but he won't own it. The divorce should have been finalized by then, therefore it will not be included in the settlement." She gave me the address of the residence, and I drove there. It took me a while to get used to driving this beast, as I had only ever driven smaller cars like Civics and Hyundais. I had driven my father's pickup a few times, but it was an older truck with a standard transmission. The sound of the engine roaring down the roads was exhilarating, and I loved the deep rumble, or was that a growl, of the beast as it flew down the roads. When I saw an open garage door and my father looking over the front of a vehicle with the hood up, I opted to park in front of the garage. As I parked the Mustang, Dad grinned at me. "I see that you've been to the lawyer's office," he told me. "Yes, I really just came from there," I said. "I believe we need to discuss. I have many questions." "I think you do. I also have some things to tell you. I couldn't tell you about much of this previously, but now that various things have occurred, I feel free to tell you the truth. First and foremost, why was I never informed about my biological grandfather? That was because when your grandpa refused to go along with your grandmother's insane beliefs, she and your mother were angry with him and decided to punish him by forbidding him from having any contact with you. You were not informed about him for two reasons. First and foremost, they were so angry with him that they determined to pretend he never existed. The second reason was that if you were aware that he existed, you could have attempted to contact him. If it occurred, you could have learned the truth. "What's the truth?" I asked. The reality was, your grandma had been cheating on him for a long. When she saw he was becoming suspicious, she surprised him and requested that she be permitted to continue having sex with her partners. Your mother agreed with your grandma and blamed your grandpa for leaving. He did not bother to divorce her. He just drained all bank and investment accounts and fled. She eventually had to file for abandonment after a year, of course. She was broke at the time, had lost her house, and had to move into a single-wide mobile home. She couldn't discover any assets by the time she filed for divorce, so she never received anything. "So, why did Grandpa leave you with his home and authority over his company?" I asked. Dad chuckled and said, "That's simple. Because your wife was so certain about your grandpa accepting the adultery, I decided to do my own investigation. We didn't have much money back then, but he covered the costs for the investigators. Your mother had also been cheating on me at the time. Yes, I had a DNA test done discreetly, and you were my daughter. If you hadn't existed, I would have divorced your mother then. We didn't have much money, so it wouldn't have cost me anything. I discussed it with your grandfather and chose to remain so that I could raise you properly. We decided that I would remain married until you were 21 years old. I would then depart, file for divorce, and take over the business until you were ready to do so, assuming you wanted to. But you've always had low-wage employment. How did you get the necessary education and experience to lead such a large company?" That was another topic we discussed. These low-wage occupations were for your grandfather's firm. He really paid for my MBA while I worked for him. We decided on a pay scheme in which my income would be around $65,000 per year, with the remainder of my remuneration being stock held in a trust that I would get when you graduated from college. Of course, none of this will be considered common property. Wow, you stayed with her for so long knowing she was cheating on you, I asked. Yes, I did. I did, however, relocate into the extra bedroom. You may have seen that we never slept in the same room. He said, I was celibate for 21 years so that I could always be there for you. You were celibate for 21 years just to be there for me all the time. I was taken aback. He grinned. Not exactly, he said. I was simply a lot more discreet than your mother was. I have evidence of her infidelity, but she has no proof of mine. We talked for a while more, and then he gave me a tour of the mansion. Eventually, I decided that I needed to head for home. Dad did tell me that I could move in if I wanted to, and he even had a large room with an ensuite bathroom ready for me. I had a feeling that I would be moving sooner rather than later. The Mustang growled as I pulled up to the mobile home. When I walked into the trailer, Mom was throwing a temper tantrum that even the worst spoiled 5-year-old would be proud of. She was yelling, screaming, kicking furniture, and throwing whatever she could get her hands on. The only thing she wasn't doing was laying on the floor and kicking her legs in the air, but that was probably because she was too busy marching around the living room and kicking the furniture every few minutes. She would stop, read something from the What the Hell. Unemployed, therefore no alimony. The pig. That elicited a good 5 minutes of screaming from her. He really filed under adultery, and it took her another half-hour to calm down. Now, Elaine, Grandma said. Elaine is my mother's name. This is just the first salvo. I'll contact my divorce lawyer and schedule an appointment with her. Once we get her on board, she will submit our counteroffer. When he sees that, I am certain he will come to his senses and attempt to reconcile. If not, we'll take him to the cleaners and make certain he ends up living in a cardboard box under the highway. Actually, Mom, I believe I'd rather employ the lawyer that your second husband hired. She very well ate your lawyer's lunch in court. Grandma glanced down and flushed at the remembrance of that humiliation. Unfortunately, she has very old-fashioned attitudes and refuses to represent anybody who has ever cheated. Besides, you didn't see who his lawyer is. She already represents him. While Mom and Grandma were discussing the divorce petition and legal counsel, I went into the kitchen and prepared a sandwich for lunch. When I returned to the living room with my sandwich and a glass of lemonade and sat on the couch to eat, Mom and Grandma saw me. Adriana, where were you this morning? Mom asked. I had a meeting about financial aid for college, I told them. Okay, it wasn't all a lie. After all, it need the trust money to pay for college. Oh, that's wonderful. So, how did things go? Will you be able to earn enough for a 2-year nursing certificate? Mom asked. Okay, this was about to get awkward actually. I'm now trying to decide between Oxford and Cambridge for my pre-med. After that, you'll see which medical school I want to attend. Mom and Grandma glanced at one another and smiled, as they do when a youngster tells them about a dream they believe will come true, before returning their gaze to me, as if I were mentally challenged. Dear, Grandma continued, I admire your passion and hopefulness, but what scholarship do you believe might pay for all of that? The most you could hope for in your situation was a scholarship to cover tuition at a public institution. You would still have to pay for accommodation and board, books, and other necessities to survive. Furthermore, it will only cover your undergraduate degree. Medical school would not be covered. Yes, Adriana, perhaps you should temper your expectations a bit, Mom continued. You would be better off going to the local college and getting a degree in something a little more practical. You may then continue to live here, which would be far less expensive than a dorm. You may even obtain a part-time job to help pay for books and other expenses that the scholarship does not cover. Oh no, I said. The meeting I attended told me that the support I'm receiving would cover anything for whatever I wanted to do. It will cover tuition, books, and even the purchase of a modest home near the institution where I may reside. It will also provide me with a $8,000 monthly allowance to cover food, entertainment, and any other expenses. Also, after I complete my undergraduate degree, it will cover any advanced degree that I choose. When I graduate, I will be completely debt-free. How about transportation? Mom asked. No scholarship I've ever heard about covers that, Grandma said. Already taken care of, you said. I got a car this morning. Mom and Grandma were taken aback. What? How did you obtain all of this? What type of scholarship is this? Well, it isn't exactly a scholarship, I told him. It's more of a trust fund that was set up for me. A trust fund? Grandma inquired, looking pale. Yes, I replied. My appointment this morning was with a lawyer. Do you know someone called Rachel Monroe? I asked. When there was no response, I said, well, she's a lawyer. Apparently, I was named in a will by someone I had never met. He was 100 millionaire. He established many trust accounts for me. One was for my studies, while the other was for once I graduated. Apparently, that amounts to several hundred million. What? Mom screamed. Who would do that? We don't know anyone with that kind of money, Grandma said. It's from Grandpa, I said. That's ludicrous, Grandma said. None of my ex-husbands have quite that much money. Furthermore, they are all still living, so you couldn't have inherited anything from them yet. Also, Rachel Monroe represented my second husband in our divorce. Don't you mean your third husband? I asked. Do not be silly. You know, I've only been married 3 times, Grandma muttered. Really? So you weren't really married to my biological grandfather? Strange that you divorced him just before I was born, I added, seeing their faces become white. I thought I would need to phone 911. Are you telling me that you don't know anybody called Philip Carter? I inquired. I saw a video this morning where he explained everything to me. I was also provided all of the paperwork that backed his claims. He even had DNA testing done to confirm that he is my biological grandpa. After that, I went over to see Dad. He offered me further information. You two robbed me out of having a connection with my grandfather by not informing me about him and spending time with him. You forced me to live in poverty and attend the state's worst schools. I read a letter from him in which he asked you to allow him to assist me get into higher schools, but you refused. I also noticed the letter you sent to him, stating that the only way you would allow him into my life was if he halted the divorce and accepted being a cuck rather than worrying about my future. You two used me as a bargaining chip to try to control him. Do you know what is funny? I continued. As a condition of inheriting dozens of millions of dollars and taking control of $100 million company if I so desired, I could not use any of the money to improve your lives after learning what you did to my grandpa and how you tried to use me to persuade him to agree to your plans. I'm not interested in rewarding you for your garbage. Fortunately for you, you were also listed in his will, I said, and Grandpa established 2 trust accounts for you. One will continue to pay the rent on this trailer, ensuring that you have somewhere to reside. The other will provide you a little monthly stipend to guarantee that you have enough food to avoid starvation. You will have to pay for everything else yourself. Grandma looked stunned, Mom was furious, and I'm sure they had no clue Grandpa had been so successful after he divorced Grandma. Hundreds of millions of dollars? Grandma inquired, suddenly understanding what I had meant. Yes, following the divorce, he produced a few of patents throughout the years, improved on them, and created more patents to accompany them. He did not sell the patents. Instead, he leased them to several corporations. The money is still flowing into the trust accounts. Anyway, here is the card from the lawyer, I said, presenting it. You should probably make an appointment to see her regarding the trust to pay the rent on this trailer and your monthly stipend. Oh, one more thing, I said. I'm leaving. I am going to remain with Dad till I depart for college. He is staying at Grandpa's place. It's much better than here. It's more than 10,000 square feet, with plenty of extra bedrooms for my guests to stay in, a cinema room, indoor and outdoor pools, and horse stables. My bedroom includes an ensuite complete bathroom, and everything is taken care of by workers. Aside from that, there's a garage where I can leave my vehicle without worrying about it being stolen or broken into, like I would if I left it here overnight. What car? Mom asked. Mine has broken down again. Can I use yours to go to my hair appointment? She asked. I simply laughed. Seriously? When did you learn to drive a manual transmission? No, you cannot use my automobile. You'd probably wreck it before leaving the driveway. But how will I get to my hair appointment? Mom grumbled. Uber, Lyft, taxi, hitchhike, and walk. Anyway, it's not my concern. With that, I turned and proceeded to my room. There wasn't much that I needed to take, just clothing, shoes, a tiny bit of cosmetics, and a few personal possessions. Unfortunately, it all fit into 3 plastic bags, 2 in the Mustang's trunk and 1 in the passenger seat. 10 years later, I met the lady in exam room 3. What seems to be the issue tonight? I asked, looking over the chart. I had graduated medical school with honors. Yes, residency was hell, but I made it through the 100-hour weeks. I wasn't even remotely interested in engineering or business, so I just let Dad take over. I still got a good distribution from the profits, and I had to attend quarterly board meetings. I was currently working in the ER of a local hospital. No, it wasn't one of the high-end hospitals, it was a community hospital. I glanced up from my notes, surprised to find Grandma standing in front of me. I asked. Clara, she answered. Around that time, another lady entered the room and said, "Parking here is a nightmare." "I had to park almost 2 streets away," she exclaimed. "Clara," Mom remarked. I hadn't seen or heard from them in 7 years. They had attended my graduation just before I began medical school. "Okay, this is surprising, but we need to solve Grandma's situation. Would it be more comfortable for you if I found another doctor for you?" I asked. No. This is fine. Besides, maybe we can catch up a little while you're treating her," Mom said. "Okay, I need to notify the attending that I am treating a family member. I'll be back shortly." I escaped from the room. Yes, I had to disclose that I was treating a family member. It wasn't forbidden, but it had to be reported along with the patient's agreement. I told the nurse at the desk, and she made a note in the file. She also followed me back to the examination room to obtain my grandmother's authorization. Grandma had tripped and sprained her wrist when she landed. It wasn't broken, but it did have a mild sprain. Mom and Grandma were still living in the trailer, which wasn't surprising given that Dad had authorized the trust to purchase it outright. Mom had finally gotten a job at a Circle K, so they had some disposable cash for some entertainment, but she was still upset about the divorce. She sought to seize the mansion he lived in and even claimed that he was receiving money from someplace to live there, but the gorgeous lawyer refuted this by demonstrating that he was only keeping the property until the will was properly performed, and his sole remuneration was free room and board. I was now living in Grandpa's old house, and Dad had bought another mansion a few blocks away when he moved his 2 girlfriends in. I never told them that Dad was actually running the company. He had deferred his pay until a year after the divorce was finalized, and then he officially stepped in as CEO with a ridiculous salary and benefits. "We want to meet your fiancé. Why don't you invite us over for supper and introduce us?" Mom inquired. "I mean, you are my daughter. You reside in the same city, but we haven't seen you since you graduated with your bachelor's degree before attending medical school." Mom was always adept at playing the emotions card on me. "Fine," I groaned, knowing I couldn't get out of this one. "Friday night at 7. Here is the address. Bring swimming suits so we may enjoy the pool and hot tub after supper." I answered the door and said, "Hello, Mom." "Hi, Grandma," I said as they walked in, swiveling their heads, taking in the opulence of my home. I had watched them through the window as they walked slowly from their old, beaten-up car that was parked in the circular driveway. The slow walk was mainly due to the landscaping, fountains, and sculptures that adorned the front lawn and gardens. "You have a beautiful home, dear," Mom managed to say. "Thank you. Most of this was done by the designer I hired, but Jerry, my fiancé, has a few ideas to add to it." "Will Jerry be here tonight as well?" Mom inquired, evidently presuming that the lovely blonde standing a few yards behind me as I welcomed my family was a servant. Okay, that may have been because there were a few of others standing in uniform just behind her. I glanced around, and the stunning blonde grinned when she saw my sneer. "Mandy, please collect their jackets and purses. George, could you kindly move their vehicle over to the garage?" My red-headed maid leapt forward and took their coats and handbags to put in the coat closet. George, who was listed as my driver but I almost never allowed him to drive, stepped up and requested Mom's keys. After obtaining the requested keys, he stepped to the door, and I saw the frown on his face when he spotted the decrepit Hyundai sitting there. "Sorry, George," I thought. "When will we meet your future husband?" Grandma inquired. "Yes, and we need to discuss your wedding and what your plans are for giving me some grandchildren," my mother said. "Husband?" I inquired, appearing perplexed. I heard a snort and chuckle from the statuesque blonde bombshell standing behind me. "Well, sure," Mom responded, perplexed. "You did tell us you were engaged. We also anticipated based on our chat at the hospital that we would meet him here tonight." Him?" I asked. "Oh, of course. I mean, you're getting married, so obviously." The last word began to be drawn out as Mom and Grandma suddenly noticed that the blonde bombshell behind me could no longer maintain her facade and was now doubled over in hilarious laughter. "Mom, Grandma, meet my fiancé, Jerry." I motioned to the blonde beauty. "Jerry, this is my mother, Elaine, and my grandmother, Charlotte." Mom and Grandma stared at me with surprise. "You're gay?" they asked in perfect synchronization. Oh yes, I said. We are very happy, merry, and joyful. They stared perplexed for a while before Grandma blurted, "Oh, bless," in surprise. Yes, it has been throughout my life. Didn't you notice that I never went on a date with a guy? We had a pleasant meal, chicken scallopini made by my chef, because I didn't want either of us to be busy in the kitchen while interacting with our guests. I'm not sure if their graciousness was genuine or if they were just trying to ingratiate themselves with me, but it didn't matter much. How is your father doing? Mom eventually inquired, since she hadn't seen or heard from him since the previous court appearance. Oh, he's doing great, I told him. He and his girlfriends left on Friday for a month-long vacation to Bali. His girlfriends? Mom asked. Yeah, I said. He is dating two identical twins and their closest friend. I'm not sure how much relaxation he'll receive. He's having trouble picking who of the twins to marry, and they're both struggling to decide who should be the other lover. I'm quite confident it'll be a sister-wives style setup. Sophia and Emily have already informed me that they have stopped using the pill and are preparing to have kids. I cannot wait to have brothers and sisters. So, Jerry. Grandma started, attempting to engage my fiancé. Yes, I am, said Jerry. I passed the bar exam a couple of years ago and joined my aunt's firm. That is remarkable. What areas of law do you specialize in? Grandma inquired. I practice exclusively in family law, specifically divorce, responded Jerry. Mom perked up and said, Really? That's wonderful. I've been thinking about hiring a lawyer and having them review my divorce. It simply seems strange that as soon as the divorce was finalized, your father became so prosperous, but I received nothing from it. Unfortunately, you're out of luck on that, Jerry said. I can't represent you because I work for my aunt's firm. It would be a conflict of interest. My aunt was your ex-husband's divorce lawyer, and her firm now represents his corporation. In addition, I have read every word in the divorce paperwork. You can sue him, but you'll lose. All you do is pay your lawyer and receive nothing in return. So, how did he go from being a mid-level manager at another firm to being jobless for about a year, and then suddenly being CEO? Mom asked. That was the plan all along, Jerry said. The company that Dad was working for was actually owned by Grandpa's company. He was not a middle manager, he was the company's managing director. He had been working directly under Grandpa for many years, preparing him to take over the whole firm. During his unemployment, he spent time learning about the other firms. He couldn't take over until the divorce was finalized. Otherwise, he would have been responsible for paying you considerable alimony for many years. That's how he and Grandpa planned it, I said, sipping my drink. What? Did they do it on purpose to deprive me of my fair part of the assets? Mom rants. Of course they did, I said. Dad found out about you fooling around on him years ago. He simply remained with you because he didn't want to leave me. He kept in contact with Grandpa, and they devised the plan. As soon as I became 18, Dad quit his job, left you, and filed for divorce. That pig. I will go to court and prosecute him for fraud. Mom rants. Yeah, good luck with that, I remarked. It has already been over 15 years. The statute of limitations has already expired. Besides, how would you prove any of that? You two have enough to survive on. The trust Grandpa left for you two is sufficient to cover your expenses and maintain food in your house. But that is it. There is nothing else. We have to shop at Goodwill for our clothing. We can't even go to quality restaurants or spend the evening out. We can hardly afford basic television, so find a job. Do something to make some money. There's nothing prohibiting you from doing that. It is simply so unfair. I gave your granddad 20 years of my life. I deserve more than this. Yes, you two were married to them for 20 years each, I continued, my voice firm. Yes, Mom gave birth to me, but in terms of giving them all that time, you two spent more time screwing around with other guys than giving your husbands and raising me. That was mostly Dad, since you, Mom, were either out with your lovers or recuperating from the previous night. The truth stung, but it needed to be stated. I could see the comprehension in their eyes as they finally started to realize their actions, albeit it was decades too late. Now, I said, since you are my mother and grandmother, and you periodically helped raise me, I am not going to take you out of my life. You will get invites to my wedding. I'll involve you two in the planning, but Sophia and Emily will be my primary aides. He'll even put aside enough money for you two to get attractive new gowns, shoes, and accessories for all of the major occasions, such as the rehearsal and the wedding. You will not be sitting in the front with Dad, but I will not place you all the way in the back. That's because I want to show Dad respect. He is not going to want to sit next to you. You will also not sit at the top table at the reception. After they left for home, I decided to stay in touch and try to build a relationship with them, because they were, after all, family. I would even talk to a few friends and see if I could get Mom a job as a receptionist. It wouldn't be much, but she wasn't qualified for anything else. They wouldn't be wealthy, but they wouldn't be poor either. Meanwhile, Elaine was reflecting on her actions. I wept myself to sleep that night, she reflected. My complete ignorance had cost me my daughter. I also recognized what it had cost me my spouse. Yes, it was all on me. I am the one that threw Dad out of my life. I had accepted all of the rubbish Mom had given me back then and blamed my father for being a jerk and allowing his wounded ego to destroy our family. What if Mom wants something extra on the side? It was not taking anything from him. Following in Mom's footsteps also prompted my spouse to depart. Okay, so I was also thinking about money. Of course, it was on my mind after seeing my daughter's splendor and hearing about my ex-husband's success. Just adding to it. When Dad left, he was nothing near that affluent, she said. I had no idea that he was working on inventions that would take off and make him a multimillionaire. I also had no notion he was investing in new businesses that would go off and add millions to his riches. How could I predict that? 21 years later, he would have put me and my mother up for a life of struggle while my ex-husband and daughter live in luxury. How could I have known he would turn my daughter against me and her mother for what we did? It was just sex. It was simply something extra on the side. It wasn't meant to harm anybody. Still, she reflected, it wasn't all about the money. Yes, it would be lovely to live like that, but I started to reflect about my life. I started remembering my youth and teenage years. Dad was always present for me. He never missed any significant events in my life. He has always shown me nothing but love and devotion. When did I lose respect for him? When did my admiration for my father transform into hatred and contempt? My tears were triggered by anything other than the loss of money. I sobbed into my pillow because I had lost the affection of both my father and my daughter. My actions forced me to be alone, without the affection of my father, spouse, and daughter. Sure, Mom was still there, but I saw her differently today. I accepted her reasons and explanations, but now I see them for what they were. Yes, I acted on them, and I could have accepted my father's justification for his conduct, but I did not. I listened to my mother and tossed everything else aside. I sobbed not for the money, but for the broken relationships that my actions had destroyed. Meanwhile, Grandma Charlotte was in deep meditation. I'm so pissed right now that I can't even sleep, she thought. I've been tossing and turning in bed for hours. Elaine and I had visited my granddaughter's place this evening. She lives in a large home with servants and luxury. We're barely getting by in this crummy single-wide mobile house. If my ex-husband had only gotten over his injured ego, I might have been living in luxury. I am not sure how he turned my granddaughter against us, but she refuses to share any of her riches with us. Even worse, he did it all from the dead. Okay, I've had sex with other guys. A big deal. I never rejected him when he asked for it. Even though he didn't ask, I presented it to him. It took nothing from him. I only did it while he was not present. He took offense and fled to punish him. I cut him out of our life. I even convinced my daughter to remove him out of her and my granddaughter's life. We made sure she never heard about him. Then my son-in-law divorced my daughter for what I had done. After that, everything became about males and their little egos. Hello, it's Elaine again, she thought, continuing her self-reflection. Just an update on my life. So Adriana's wedding was stunning. Mom and I helped a little, but it was my ex-husband's girlfriends who performed the most of the work. My mother and I were in the third row for the ceremony. We were not seated at the head table during the reception, but rather at one of the tables in the front and center. It was a stunning wedding. I laughed as Clara and Naomi cried forsaking all others during wedding vows. Mom glared at this. The reception was a blast. They had a live music, delicious food, and an open bar. Perhaps that's why. Never mind, Elaine thought with a sneer. Anyway, it's been a year since our wedding, and a lot has changed. Adriana utilized her connections to get me a position at, of all places, my husband's firm. I started as a receptionist, but after taking a few night courses, I became the personal secretary to one of the vice presidents. I'm now earning $20 per hour, so I'm not hurting financially. I was really able to move into a real home. Well, not alone. No, Mom did not move in with me. She's still in her mobile home. I believe my ex-husband elevated me to this job as punishment. It placed me in a position where I see him every day, as well as his 3 girlfriends, as they enter and leave his office. It's like rubbing my nose through it, seeing what I tossed away. What he doesn't know is that I've accepted it and gone on. I'm usually friendly to them and like conversing with them. The daughters and I even go out for lunch on occasion. My life has improved dramatically over the previous year, but Mom has become more unhappy about her own predicament. Adriana and I have both reached out to her, but she is so bitter and unpleasant that it is difficult to be around her. Our relationship has been on a gradual slide since Adriana's wedding. It only got worse once I moved out. Anyway, I am a lot happy today. I have a nice job that I like. My connection with my kid is a lot better now. I have a lot more friends today, and Donald and I have a lovely place to live. Donald, are you asking? Elaine paused. Oh, I skipped that section. My daughter's wedding had an open bar. After evaluating my life choices over the preceding month, I concluded that being a for any guy who caught my attention was not a healthy mindset. I decided to take a vacation from dating until I had my mind on straight. Honestly, I thought I'd simply go without sex for a time, but destiny had other plans. I was sitting at our table, observing everyone else and sipping my Captain and Coke. Several attractive guys had asked me to dance, but I rejected them all down. Now, I have to add that I was still rather beautiful for my age. Several individuals had observed that I seemed 15 years younger than my real age. I'd always worked hard to be in shape and look my best. I was probably on my 3rd drink when this stunning man, about my age, stepped beside me. Hello, my name is Donald, and I am Naomi's co-worker. I've been watching all those men come over and hit on you, but you've turned them all down. That brings me to a conclusion. I can assist you. Intrigued, I said, oh. And what's the conclusion? He giggled. You are done with dating in general, and I would love to dance with you and keep your interest in men and dating alive by being a true gentleman to you. Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm done with dating, I said. He chuckled. You've got nothing to lose. Maybe it was the drink, but I had a tingling in my body again. Perhaps it was the open bar. We danced to various music. It wasn't as if I had never danced with a guy before. He impressed me with his intelligence, wit, and charisma. I absolutely lost count of time. Suddenly, I turned around and saw that practically everyone had departed. Mom was also gone. What's wrong, babe? He asked. Mom drove us here and she already left. No problem, sweetie. I can drive you home, he offered. Are you sure? I asked. Absolutely, he said. I awoke the next morning with the sun shining through the curtains, feeling more satisfied and relaxed than I could ever remember. As I looked around the strange bedroom that I was in, I realized there was a strong arm around me. Turning over, I saw a pair of smiling green eyes looking at me. What? I stammered. Are you interested in this dude, babe? He grinned. I began to remember the previous night. We had gotten into his yellow Camaro Southwest H. He could drive me home. We hadn't even left the parking lot when he asked if I would like to stop at his place for a nightcap and more conversation. I agreed. Yes, I had a bit to drink, but I was far from drunk. For you degenerates out there, no, he did not spike my drink. I was fully aware of what was happening. That first kiss is what started it. I had lunch with Lucas and apologized for my behavior. He forgave me, but we would never be together. We were able to buy a small 3-bedroom house with the help of Lucas and Clara, but it was mostly the 2 of us. I invited Mom to move in with us with Donald's permission, but she refused. Oh, and I would never cheat on my new girlfriend. I've been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and lost everything that really matters in the process. Both Lucas and Clara have made it obvious that there would be no third chance. I think that my mother and my hatred of men in general made my daughter choose a woman as her life partner, Elaine said. It's just a thought, but it does come up in my mind often. Meanwhile, Charlotte was in her wretched existence. Degenerates. No, I wasn't one of those lonely old ladies with 30 cats, she murmured to herself as warming up a can of cat food on the stove. I could not even afford 1 cat. No, the tin of cat food I was warming up was for supper. It was all I could afford when my degenerate daughter left to live with her boyfriend. First, my granddaughter turns out to be a degenerate, and then I discover that my ex-son-in-law is in a kinky polyamorous relationship with himself and 3 other women. Now my own daughter has become a degenerate. She even suggested that I move into her new mansion of depravity with her. I don't want anything to do with any of them anymore. After choking on the horrible garbage, she thought to herself, seriously, how can they expect a cat to eat this? I get ready for bed, she said, looking in the mirror as she walked through the bathroom. I used to be gorgeous. My once long golden hair is becoming gray. My previous 38D breasts, which sat high and proud on my chest, have sagged halfway down my stomach. My formerly small, firm belly now protrudes beyond my drooping tits. My formerly lovely face is now wrinkled with creases and drooping cheeks. My formerly tight hips have expanded out in droops. My once pretty vertical lips, with their well-trimmed blonde triangle, are now an unruly mess of gray hair. I wonder whether one may get lost there and never return. My vibrator has been my lone lover for the last 5 years. I even need lubrication to use it now. God damn you, Victor, she yelled at the sky. Why couldn't you put your delicate masculine ego aside and accept the situation? It was simply one more in a long line of monotonous, joyless, lonely evenings as I waited for death to take me and free me from this misery. Thank you for watching. What are your thoughts on the story's twists? Let us know in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.